Welcome to Geezers and Gurus on H.V.A.C. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We are going to be talking about heating and cooling, but in a little bit different direction. I have with me a friend of mine and an architect who designs solar passive housing. And so we're going to talk to people today. I mean, maybe you're interested in building a house, want to know how to orientate things or talk about that, but we have an expert with us. This is Walter Reddig, a friend of mine and a architect. Walter, why don't you tell us what you do and for a little?
Okay, I tell it a little bit from the beginning, so we all know where I come from. I'm from Germany, was into cabinet making and carpentry in the beginning when I was a young man. Went through an apprenticeship, which all the people that come from Europe know, and it takes about 3.5 years, and then you become a journeyman. You have to take an exam. You are a journeyman for about 5 years, and after that you know a little bit more about anything about carpentry and cabinet making. I took another exam at that point, and then my goal was to become a master cabinet maker. Now, that is a little bit more difficult, and there are not too many there. I got to know a person. He actually went the same route, but he also went to school. I became the youngest master in my precinct there, so that was a big deal. And I thought that was for life. Didn't stop there, and I think you should know I wanted to go to school, and I did. I passed the entry exam about 3 years, or 5 semesters really. I became a technician. Then another 3 semesters I became an interior architect. With that, I came to this country to visit it, and for 1 year to test it and see, what this country was all about.
Yeah.
And so a lot of talk about United States, but I actually came here to visit. So when I came here, there were a lot of things I was lacking. The biggest thing was I was not an architect. And the interior architect didn't even exist. That profession didn't exist here. So, and then I was told I had to work 9 years under a registered architect until I can make the state board exam, which is 1 week and lots of hours and testing. So, and wouldn't you believe it, I went right through it. So I passed it, and I became an architect and worked for a very known firm here that you might not know, but you might. His name was Saarinen, a very famous architect from Finland. And so all the people I worked with came through that office. So I learned a lot, of course. And it was my doing, too, to find the best. And so that happened in Troy, Michigan. And I went there and worked there for 4 years. And then I worked for another architect who was the dean of LTU at that time. And so I worked there, too, and working on a hospital. So I think that is in a nutshell how I got to the point where I am now. And so
What was your, okay, you were just being like a general architect.
Yeah.
What drew you or got you into the housing and this passive, the stuff that I know you for, which is absolutely fabulous?
Very interesting. I of course didn't start with houses. I did larger projects, and then I got to know, you always get to know someone in your life, and he wanted a house, and so I agreed to do it for him if it could be special. And that house was on a lake, and it consisted of platforms through the house, and there was no support other than a center shaft out of brick, amazing, tall and right on the, and that did all the mechanical stuff. So I can actually get into it a little bit, but the main thing, it was passive. and it was looking at the lake, and then you saw all those various different platforms and with stairs connecting it. So very interesting house. And the owner luckily was willing to experiment with that. And that was my
That's the first one.
yeah. And then when it was built, House Beautiful came, you know how that goes. And I was in the magazine right away. So, and then people saw it, and so I got to know others. About that house, I want to talk about the shaft a little bit. It was very large. It was a big brick unit that was about in the middle of the house. And then what happened was it had a skylight on top.
We're going to get back to the house. And the house is on a platform. Okay, let's go there. And you said the brick.
Yeah, there was,
We'll
was
pick it
a
up.
brick shaft, I would call it, and it was very large, and the platforms were somewhat connected to it. And but other than that, the walls were not float bearing, or it was just all floating.
Wow.
So the way it, you will see the pictures also, and the walls to the lake, or the outside wall to the lake, was nothing but glass. So they could actually, you know, see the lake and its beauty and its and from every level. So that was good. And the highest level was their bedroom. It was exposed. There were no doors. There were no rooms. So
It was just
so
the open
it
level.
was all open. And the one room that was actually at the near end planned into it were the parents of the wife.
Ah.
And they couldn't go for that. So there was too advanced. And so we had a room for them, and that was the only room, a bedroom and a toilet room and bathroom, you know. So that was pretty good. And the children were way up there with the birds and the trees, you know. And the glass wall was about 5 feet away from this total structure. So she could have, you know, 3-story plants hanging down, and it was just amazing. And they still love it, and it was, I don't know when it was done, but, you know, almost as soon as I became an architect, almost. So, and so that house is now still revered by them. They like it a lot, and they tell me every time, so that's good.
Yeah.
So that's a good feeling. And then their friend, who I didn't know, he was a middle school teacher, or so, and we became friends. And they bought a house also on the lake, Sylvan Lake, and they hired an architect and wanted to remodel it. And he put toward the water a structure that was mostly glass on that one side, just a cube, but the house was still the same old house.
Yeah.
So that was not a good solution. And he said, Walter, why don't you show us what we could do? And unfortunately, I was very busy by then. So I did it, and I said, give me 2 days, and I will give you a solution. And I did. I worked almost all night. And they loved it, and it was actually built. So, and it was built so that remnants of the old building were left alone, so for tax reasons.
Ah.
So if it's not a totally new house, it was much less, you know, on the lake it's expensive to live.
Yeah.
And so they had a field day, they loved it.
Good.
And nice ride up and all that. So so that was the second house. And now I think I kind of introduced myself what my way in life was to be, special things and up to date. And I think we had a real problem with houses that were the typical subdivision. They had maybe 3 models, the builder,
Mhm.
and then so they would not be all the same. They were flip-flapped and they had different things on it, so they looked a little different, but totally nothing. They didn't do anything, and they were not working. Their houses were not working.
You mean not working in what way? And not working
In many ways. Most of them, I will tell you one example. I live at the end of this, towards the main road on this subdivision, because I wanted to give access to my clients. That's why I chose the main road.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then there's a pond, and
Mhm.
then the
It's up.
subdivision starts. And on the pond, people that bought those properties, there were 6 of them, 6 properties, larger, bigger homes, and they thought, they have a big deal there. And so they built big homes, and I saw it this morning again. And yesterday, I actually found out what was happening there. Never looked at those houses, who wants to? And then what happened was, they had a model, I think 2 models, so the houses are pretty much the same, but
Little.
yeah, they turned it around
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
that. And so, would you believe it, I have to tell the people here that build new houses, those houses were all oriented so that, of course, they looked at the pond, which was fine, which was east, so they had the east sun coming up, and then it was empty. It was no more sun. Once the sun was about at 11 or 12 o'clock, it was already half around.
So they lost
had-
the southern
They
exposure.
had no sunlight in the house. They were cold. And would you believe it, all 6 of them could have been, for no money, very efficient as solar home, as
Solar passive.
yeah. So and they didn't know that. So now they have 6 big bombers of houses there, and they are not very comfortable. So, but that was a good example. I took some photographs, but there were trees in front of it, so you hardly see it. And they paid a premium for
Yeah.
for the property and a premium for the house,
Yeah.
and they had nothing. So this is a good example what happens now with subdivisions. I don't want to make the builders sound bad, but in a half an hour they could have had a different house. All they had to do is flip the thing, and they had sunshine all day. So what a difference. But it didn't happen, so the people are stuck with it. And then when you go through the subdivision, of course, you have no indication of anything about
So regular
passivity.
subdivision homes are really not solar passive planned in any way, no matter what somebody says, basically.
Right. They are not, because they were not known, or they were not wanted to be, because people don't know. Not that they couldn't do it, but
They just don't know about it.
They just didn't know about it.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We're here to inform people. So let's start with somebody out there who says, okay, I want to build a house. Let's go on 2 different scenarios here. One, where somebody has a pretty good sized plot of land.
Yes.
And we're going to say at this point barren land. And now I'm going to tell you why. And number 2, somebody who's bought a lot in a subdivision. Traditionally, you have a street there,
Yes.
and that street, let's say the street is facing east. Okay, so when you're it's an east side, so the east is the front of the house.
Yeah.
Now, if that would be traditional. To orientate the living space, let's say we had enough room so we could, the sun would whatever. So east is where it comes up, goes across the top of the house, and then hits the back end of the house is west. And north would be it would be on the right side, and south on the left. So in a house that way, would you put to capture the heat, to orientate the living space and the bedrooms? I would think the bedrooms would be more on the north side of the house?
Well, let's put it this way, my knowledge is much broader than that.
Yes.
That's the problem.
But,
So when let's say if I had to do with that subdivision,
mm-hmm,
I would go to the city planners and go right there. And I said, your civil engineer who does the street layout has to first think about solar passive. That's the most important thing. And it would look all much different. And then you take advantage of the views, you take advantage of the sunshine. You know, those are all things we need in life.
so you start, you're basically saying it should be started at the planning stages. So builders out
Yes.
there, you listen to what this man is saying. You can do whole subdivisions if you just plan it out right to start with.
Absolutely.
You can't do a subdivision when you want to make little nice circles and things like
No,
that.
it doesn't
and
make- no.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, they're actually negative because they don't do anything to the houses. And the problem is also that people that move in there into it, they talk to real estate people and they don't know. They don't know anything. They just want to sell a lot. They don't know whether it's good or bad or not. They do what the owner wants.
Yeah.
And the owner doesn't know. So the owner gets together then with a builder, and the builder wants as many as he can build. And of course it's his profit.
Sure.
And why would he care about passive solar?
Unless that
Yeah.
was going to be a selling point of the subdivision he was putting up.
I want to say one sentence. The builder has to talk to the owners or prospective owners and say, I know a way that you can have heating and cooling and it doesn't cost you a penny. That's what you can do if you want to.
We're going to get into that
Yeah.
in depth, but
Yeah.
and that actually goes back to even the first house. And when you were talking about this house sitting there and all these panels on it, like I was thinking, what kind of heating did you put in there? Was it forced air? Was it radiant floor heat?
Yeah. But right now,
But we don't want to get into that because we are talking. We're going to stay on task here and talk about the orientation of these houses and where to start. Now we just started with Walter here, and we said subdivisions. You need to start at ground zero. Ground zero is when you lay out the subdivision.
right, the planning.
The planning, and it needs to be with the city's approval and everything. And if you think about this, everybody's talking green here. This is a wonderful way of your cities to plan future development in your city to be solar orientated. If you're talking about going green, let's not build a building that needs to have a power plant put up to service it. Let's see how far we can get, and this is just the first thing we're talking about. This is how far can we get in our design to cut your energy costs down, and that's where we're starting. We'll talk about systems and things later. But now, orientation. So the next little thing that I said was, you have a wide open piece of land, let's say in the middle of a farm field.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
now you're going to put a house up, and to make it solar passive and take advantage of the orientation. Let's say we're going to plant trees.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we're going to plant trees that will block the sun in the summer a little bit and
Sure.
drop leaves so that we have sun enter. How we do that? We got a whole land.
I would not do it as it was done, that's for sure. So
Okay.
when that development started, guess who came first? The bulldozers.
Yes.
And they knocked over all the trees.
Yep.
Yeah, and then they took it away, and it was just bare, it was dust. The dust was flying into our house. You know, it was the whole lot was ruined. So now, little by little, people plant their own little sticky thing.
Yeah.
It takes 10 years to be a
Takes
mature
30 years
tree.
to be
Right,
anything.
Right. So they could plant it, oh gee, the sun is not here, or this is not there, and flowers want to be here. And so they do it afterwards. But they could have, left trees alone and at least consider them keeping them. You know, they're
I have
mature
noticed
trees.
that in a couple of the newer
Yeah.
subdivisions, they're starting
Yeah.
to do that, trying to keep some of the more mature trees and not cutting everything down.
Oh, they're,
I think there's across the whole country, there is a different mindset, but it's not just the mindset of the people. It is also the mindset, we have new builders, we have new builders that think now a little bit more of the land and what they're doing.
yes.
It's not all of them, obviously, and when you get into large tract homes like I see in Texas, and I see some developments in Florida, they have no clue. They are just putting up stuff that, I'm sorry, it's beyond my imagination, but it runs, there's a choices, and the choices come now. The choices come now when the local planning, somebody wants to do, lots of development in Florida, lots of development in all the southern states.
Right.
And now is the time to take a look at passive solar orientation. New things are coming along. Solar panels for your roof is a doable thing now. It's not a joke anymore. You can actually do this. But don't you think it would be nice if you orientated your house before it was built so that you got the maximum solar gain for that and your rooms? And this is what we're talking about. He's talking passive solar. I'm saying, hey, do it correct, and you can make your own energy if you orientate your roof correctly. So it's two things joined into one, but it's up to people out there, architects and builders, to say, hey, that's a good idea if we start at the beginning, and how do we get to that?
Well, that brings us
So-
to the end of the first video with Walter Reddig, and he has given me a bunch of things that we've put on this video and some more that we'll be putting on others to show you how to get a sense of how to set up your house for solar if you want to do that. Solar does work. It's been working since the Egyptians, so I guess they figured it out too. It's something to look forward to. If you're going to build a house for yourself or you're making improvements, even if you're making some large improvements on your house, you don't have to go as far as this, but you sure can incorporate the ideas. And there are many good ones, and we'll keep coming them at you, and we hope you enjoyed this program and part of Let's Really Teach HVAC and a podcast here, Geezers and Gurus on HVAC. Until the next time, when Walter returns to pick up our conversation, this is Carl Dard saying, have a good day.